Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. Are you ready to jump into one of the most famous mysteries in the world?
I know I am.
Today, we are going to be talking about the Bermuda Triangle, that infamous spot in the Atlantic.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about, right? Kind of between Miami, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico.
Sounds familiar.
Not an official place or anything, but
Yeah.
it's got that reputation for making things
Oh,
disappear.
yeah. Ships, planes, you
Yeah.
name it. It's been making headlines for decades.
Exactly. But, we're not just here to rehash the spooky stories.
Yeah.
We want to get into the real accounts.
That's right. Let's see what we can learn from actual reports and, some solid science.
The goal here is to give you the knowledge to cut through the hype and understand what's really going on in the Bermuda Triangle.
I love it. Empowering our listeners with facts.
So let's start our journey by going way back in time. Did you know that even Christopher Columbus had a weird experience in the Bermuda Triangle?
Oh, absolutely. His
Yeah.
logbook from the late 15th century when he sailed through the area.
I had no idea it went back that far.
Oh, yeah. He talks about this great flame crashing into the ocean and his compass going haywire. And then there were these strange lights, too.
Wow, just imagine being out on the open ocean back then and seeing something like that. It's no wonder the Bermuda Triangle has this mysterious reputation.
Definitely makes you think, right?
But back then, they didn't have the same kind of investigations we'd have today.
True. And that makes some of these early stories really hard to figure out, like the USS Cyclops vanishing in 1918 with over 300 people on board.
Tragic.
Absolutely. And the fact that there weren't any distress signals makes it even tougher to know what happened.
Right, like the Carol of Deering, too. That five-masted schooner found totally abandoned in 1921.
Super spooky for sure. But without more clues, it's almost impossible to say for certain.
It seems like the idea of the Bermuda Triangle as this big mystery really took off in the 20th century.
Yeah, there's this 1950 article in the Miami Herald by Edward Van Winkle Jones. That's one of the first times it was mentioned in writing.
Oh, interesting.
And then George X. Sand wrote about it in Fate magazine in 1952. And, well, the media has been loving it ever since.
Oh, for sure. And then you've got that case that everyone always brings up, Flight 19, the 5 Navy bombers that just vanished in 1945.
Yeah, Flight 19, that's like the ultimate Bermuda Triangle mystery.
It really put the whole thing on the map.
Totally. Now, the lead pilot, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, he was experienced, but even he said he was getting disoriented and his compass was acting up.
And then that last message saying they were going to ditch when they ran out of fuel.
Chilling.
And they were never found.
And to add to the creepiness, the rescue plane that went looking for them, a PBM Mariner that disappeared too.
I know, it almost feels like it's feeding the conspiracy theories.
Absolutely. But here's the thing. Even though these stories are super compelling, most of these disappearances can actually be explained.
Exactly. We don't have to jump to the supernatural. Science can give us some pretty good insights into what might have happened. So let's get into those scientific theories then. What are some of the top contenders for explaining the Bermuda Triangle?
Well, first up, you've got the Gulf Stream. It's this powerful current that runs right through the Bermuda Triangle, and it can really sweep things away.
Making it tough to find anything.
Especially back in the day before we had all the high-tech search equipment. Plus, the Gulf Stream creates some wild weather, sudden storms, you name it.
So even if you set out on a calm day, things could change in an instant.
You got it. And then there's the theory of methane hydrates.
Methane hydrates.
Yeah, these are big pockets of methane gas trapped under the ocean floor. If they erupt, it can basically make the water unable to support a ship. Like the ocean floor could just collapse.
That's terrifying. Like the ocean swallowing ships whole. And is that connected to those rogue waves I've heard about?
It could be. Those are these massive waves that can appear out of nowhere and slam into even huge ships. So whether it's a methane eruption or a rogue wave, it could sink a ship in an instant.
Wow. I'd never want to encounter either of those. But what about those magnetic anomalies I keep hearing about?
Ah, yes, the compass confusion.
Yeah.
So the Bermuda Triangle happens to be one of only two spots on Earth where a compass points to true north instead of magnetic north.
So it's like your compass is lying to you.
Pretty much. Which would have been a huge problem for navigation in the past before GPS. Imagine trying to sail across the ocean with your compass slightly off. You could end up miles off course.
That's scary. Even experienced navigators could get lost.
Exactly. And then on top of all that, we have to factor in human error. The Bermuda Triangle is a busy shipping route, so mistakes happen.
Right. People make mistakes. equipment malfunctions, and sometimes bad judgment calls, especially with bad weather.
All of those things have probably contributed to accidents in the Bermuda Triangle. It's not that the place itself is cursed or anything more, like a lot of things are happening there, so statistically a few are bound to go wrong.
So maybe it's not that the Bermuda Triangle is inherently dangerous, just that we hear about the incidents there more because of the myth?
You're getting it. And that brings us to a researcher named Lawrence Kusha. Back in 1975, he did a ton of research and debunked a lot of the popular Bermuda Triangle claims.
Really?
Yeah, he found that a lot of those stories that made the Bermuda Triangle famous were either exaggerated, never actually happened, or didn't even happen in the triangle at all.
So some of those famous disappearances weren't even real,
Not exactly. It's more like the stories got twisted and embellished over time.
like a game of telephone gone wrong.
Exactly. And here's the kicker. Insurance companies like Lloyd's of London, the ones who are all about assessing risk, they don't consider the Bermuda Triangle to be any more dangerous than other parts of the ocean.
Huh. So if they're not worried, maybe we shouldn't be either.
That's a pretty logical conclusion. The evidence really suggests that the Bermuda Triangle, while definitely fascinating, isn't some supernatural danger zone like the stories make it out to be.
Okay, so if it's not all supernatural, then why do we keep coming back to this mystery? What is it about the Bermuda Triangle that still fascinates us?
Well, think about it. Humans are drawn to the unknown. And it's a lot easier to remember these dramatic, unexplained events than the ordinary stuff that happens every day.
Like the old saying, if it bleeds, it leads. We love a good scary story.
It's true. We're captivated by the possibility of things we can't explain, and the Bermuda Triangle is a perfect example of that. But before we get too lost in the spooky stories, I'm really interested in those other triangles you mentioned.
Oh, yeah. While we've been focused on the Atlantic, our research actually turned up reports of similar strange happenings in triangular areas around the world, places you might not have even heard of, like the Michigan Triangle. The Michigan Triangle, where's that one?
Right in the middle of Lake Michigan.
Oh, Lake Michigan. Okay,
Yeah.
so not exactly the open ocean, but still, I guess anything could happen.
Right. And then there's the Dragon's Triangle, sometimes called the Devil's Sea. It's off the coast of Japan.
Okay, I've heard of that one.
It's got those magnetic anomalies too, just like the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
And people report seeing weird lights, ships, disappearing planes vanishing. It's got it all.
Wow, so missing captains, magnetic weirdness. And they all happen in these triangular zones. That can't be just coincidence, can it?
Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Are these triangular shapes just random, or is there something more going on? We might not have the answer, but it's definitely something to think about.
Definitely. Okay, but before we go too far down the triangle
Yeah.
rabbit hole, let's get back to the Bermuda Triangle and those specific cases. We were talking about the SS Cotopaxi earlier, the one that disappeared in 1925 and supposedly reappeared years later.
Oh, yeah, the Cotopaxi. That's a case that really shows how tricky these maritime mysteries can be. So this ship leaves Charleston loaded with coal, headed for Havana, and then poof, gone. Just vanishes.
And for years, nobody knew what happened to it.
Right. It was a ghost ship for decades. Then, in the 1980s, a shipwreck is found off the coast of Florida near St. Augustine.
Not even close to where it was supposed to be.
Nope. And it took a lot of research to finally confirm that the wreck was the Cotopaxi. They actually only figured it out in 2020.
So not only was it not in the Bermuda Triangle, but we still don't know what happened to it.
Exactly. It just adds to the mystery.
Yeah.
The ocean keeps its secrets pretty well.
It really does. And speaking of secrets, we can't talk about the Bermuda Triangle without mentioning some of those crazier theories, right?
Yep.
We've talked about the science, but there's a whole other world of speculation out
Oh,
there.
yeah, for sure. You've got everything from Atlantis to alien abductions.
I mean, come on, who doesn't love a good alien story?
Right. Some people believe that Atlantis, this lost city with super advanced technology, is somehow interfering with ships and planes.
Okay, I have to admit, the idea of a hidden underwater civilization is pretty cool. But it's probably just a story.
Right. Most likely, there's no real evidence to support it. But hey, it's fun to think about.
It is. And then you've got the alien theories. Maybe the Bermuda Triangle is an alien base or a portal to another dimension.
Right. Explains all the strange lights and disappearances, maybe even the compass problems.
It's like we can't help but fill in the blanks with something fantastical.
It's true. But as fun as these theories are, we have to remember there's no real proof to back them up. It's more about the power of our imagination. We love a good mystery, and our brains are wired to look for patterns and explanations even when they might not exist.
I guess that's part of what makes us human, right? We're always trying to make sense of the world, especially when faced with something as strange and unexplained as the Bermuda Triangle. But even if we put those wilder theories aside, there's still this feeling that some things just can't be explained.
Oh, I agree. There are definitely some incidents that leave even the biggest skeptics scratching their heads, like the case of Bruce Gernon.
Bruce Gernon.
He was a pilot who claims he flew through a time warp over the Bermuda Triangle back in 1970.
A time warp? Okay, now you're just messing with me.
I'm serious. He was flying with his father and a business partner when they hit this weird cloud formation. Their instruments went crazy and they were surrounded by this thick fog.
Okay, that already sounds creepy. What happened next?
Well, they eventually flew out of the fog and found themselves over Miami Beach. But according to their calculations, they should have been way further north near the Bimini Islands.
So he's saying he basically traveled through time.
That's his story. And of course, there's no way to prove it scientifically, but it's one of those cases that makes you think, what if there are things out there that we just don't understand yet?
Wow. Okay, so time warps aside, I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier about human error. Couldn't it be that even experienced pilots and sailors make mistakes that could lead to disaster?
Definitely. The ocean is huge and unforgiving. Even a small mistake can have big consequences, and the Bermuda Triangle, with its crazy weather and strong currents, can make those mistakes even worse.
So it's not about the Bermuda Triangle being cursed, it's more about the fact that it's a challenging environment where human error can be amplified.
Exactly. And we also have to remember that we still don't know everything about the ocean. There's so much we haven't explored and understood.
That's a humbling thought. We like to think we have all the answers, but the ocean is a constant reminder that there's still so much mystery out there.
It is. And speaking of mysteries, remember that claim that the number of incidents in the Bermuda Triangle is way higher than other parts of the ocean? Well, remember Lawrence Kusha and his research. He showed that when you factor in how much traffic goes through the Bermuda Triangle, the rate of incidents is actually no different than anywhere else.
So it's not that more bad things happen in the Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah.
It's just that we hear about them more because of the myth itself. The myth is feeding itself.
Exactly. It's all about selective reporting and sensationalism. The Bermuda Triangle has become the go-to explanation for any weird thing that happens at sea, even if it has nothing to do with the actual area.
It's amazing how powerful that narrative has become.
Yeah,
Even though, as we've seen, there are often perfectly normal explanations for these events.
right. And while it might take time and careful investigation to uncover those explanations, they're usually there.
So maybe the Bermuda Triangle isn't as spooky as we thought. But I have to say, even though we've debunked some of the myths, I'm still fascinated by it. There's still something alluring about the whole thing.
I get it. There's something about the unknown that sparks our curiosity and our imagination. And even if we never have all the answers, that's part of what makes exploring and discovering things so exciting.
It keeps us asking questions, searching for knowledge, and pushing the boundaries of what we know.
Exactly. And speaking of pushing boundaries, one thing we haven't talked about yet is the role of technology in all of this, both in creating the myth and in debunking it.
That's a good point. Technology has come a long way since the days of Christopher Columbus.
It has. Imagine sailing the open ocean with just a compass and the stars to guide you. It's incredible that people did that at all.
And if your compass is giving you bad readings because of magnetic anomalies, well, that's a recipe for disaster.
For sure. And without any way to send a distress signal, a small problem could easily turn into a tragedy. A broken engine, a navigational error, a sudden storm, any of those things could be fatal.
But then technology started to advance. We got better navigation tools, better communication, and search and rescue became more sophisticated.
And guess what? As technology improved, the number of unexplained disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle started to go down.
So it wasn't that the Bermuda Triangle suddenly became safer, it's just that we got better at dealing with the challenges it presented.
Exactly. Nowadays, with GPS, satellite phones, and advanced radar, it's a lot harder for a ship or plane to just vanish. We can track their movements, monitor their communications, and if something goes wrong, we have a much better chance of finding them and helping them.
Technology has really changed our relationship with the ocean. It's taken away some of the fear and mystery and given us more control.
But even with all our fancy gadgets, there are still people who believe that the Bermuda Triangle holds secrets beyond our understanding.
It's true. And while it's good to be skeptical, it's also important to keep an open mind. The ocean is vast, and we've only explored a tiny fraction of it. Who knows what we might find down there?
Maybe there are things we haven't even imagined yet.
That's a pretty exciting thought. But for now, let's bring it back to what we do know. We've talked about history, science, even some of the wilder theories. So here's the big question. What is it about the Bermuda Triangle that continues to capture our imagination? Why are we still so fascinated by this place even after everything we've learned?
That's a good question. I think it's a mix of things. First, there's the history. We've been telling stories about mysterious disappearances at sea for centuries. It's part of our culture, our
It's
mythology.
like these stories tap into a primal fear of the unknown, a fear of the vastness and power of the ocean.
Exactly. And then you've got the media. They love a good mystery, and they've definitely played a role in keeping the Bermuda Triangle myth alive. Sensational headlines, dramatic recreations, a constant focus on the unexplained. It all adds to the fascination.
We're drawn to the possibility that there are forces out there that we don't understand, that maybe there's more to the universe than we can see and measure.
Right. Like we want to believe that magic is still real, that there are secrets hidden just out of reach.
But even if we set aside the supernatural, there's still plenty of mystery to be found in the natural world.
Oh, absolutely. The way the ocean works, weather patterns, even the way our own brains perceive reality, there's so much we still don't fully grasp. And the Bermuda Triangle, while probably not the supernatural vortex some people think it is a great example of how complex and unpredictable our planet can be.
And it reminds us that even with all our technology, there are still things we don't fully understand. There are still mysteries to explore, questions to answer, and boundaries to push.
Well said. That's a great point to stop and think about everything we've discussed today. We've gone through history, explored scientific explanations, and even considered some pretty wild ideas.
I feel like we've gained a much deeper understanding of the Bermuda Triangle, the myths, the realities, and the reasons why it continues to fascinate us.
Yeah.
But before we wrap things up completely, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
We've talked about all these possible explanations for the Bermuda Triangle, rogue waves, methane eruptions, human error. But what if the key to understanding this mystery isn't about what's happening out there in the ocean, but what's happening inside ourselves?
Whoa, I like where this is going. Tell me more.
Think about all the stories we've discussed. So many of them involve disorientation, confusion,
Yeah.
losing track of where you are. Pilots seeing their compasses, spin sailors feeling lost, even Bruce Gernon's time warp experience. It all seems to point to something messing with people's perception.
That's an interesting observation. So you're saying maybe these incidents are less about external forces and more about internal experiences.
Exactly. What if the Bermuda Triangle isn't a place where the laws of physics are breaking down, but a place where our perception of reality, our sense of time and space, gets distorted?
You're blowing my mind here. So it's not that the world is changing, it's that our understanding of it is being challenged.
Right? There's a lot of research being done on how our brains perceive time and space, and how those perceptions can be affected by things like stress fatigue, even electromagnetic fields.
And we know the Bermuda Triangle has those unique magnetic properties. Plus, you've got the potential for extreme weather. Could it be that the environment there somehow messes with our brains?
It's a wild idea, but it's definitely worth considering. We've spent so much time looking for answers outside ourselves, but maybe the answer lies within the human mind.
That's a pretty powerful thought to leave our listeners with. It makes you question not just the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, but the mysteries of our own perception and the limits of what we know.
This deep dive has been amazing. We started with Christopher Columbus, sailed through the mystery of the Cotopaxi, dove into the science, and even considered the possibility of our own minds playing tricks on us.
The Bermuda Triangle continues to fascinate us even as we learn more about it. It's a reminder that even in this age of science and technology, there are still mysteries out there, and that the human mind itself is a vast, unexplored territory.
And to our listeners, I'll leave you with this. The next time you think about the Bermuda Triangle, don't just think about the ships and planes that have vanished. Think about the limits of what we know, the power of our own minds, and the endless mysteries that still surround us. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep. But before we wrap things up completely, I want to leave our listeners with something to think about.
Okay, I'm listening.
We've talked about all these possible explanations for the Bermuda Triangle, rogue waves, methane eruptions, human error. But what if the key to understanding this mystery isn't about what's happening out there in the ocean, but what's happening inside ourselves?
Whoa, I like where this is going. Tell me more.
Think about all the stories we've discussed. So many of them involve disorientation, confusion, losing track of where you are, pilots seeing their compasses, spin sailors feeling lost, even Bruce Gernon's time warp experience. It all seems to point to something messing with people's perception.
That's an interesting observation. So you're saying maybe these incidents are less about external forces and more about internal experiences.
Exactly. What if the Bermuda Triangle isn't a place where the laws of physics are breaking down, but a place where our perception of reality, our sense of time and space, gets distorted?
You're blowing my mind here. So it's not that the world is changing, it's that our understanding of it is being challenged.
Right. There's a lot of research being done on how our brains perceive time and space, and how those perceptions can be affected by things like stress fatigue, even electromagnetic fields.
And we know the Bermuda Triangle has those unique magnetic properties. Plus, you've got the potential for extreme weather. Could it be that the environment there somehow messes with our brains?
It's a wild idea, but it's definitely worth considering. We spent so much time looking for answers outside ourselves, but maybe the answer lies within the human mind.
That's a pretty powerful thought to leave our listeners with. It makes you question not just the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle, but the mysteries of our own perception and the limits of what we know.
This deep dive has been amazing. We started with front. Christopher Columbus sailed through the mystery of the Cotopaxi, dove into the science, and even considered the possibility of our own minds playing tricks on us.
The Bermuda Triangle continues to fascinate us even as we learn more about it. It's a reminder that even in this age of science and technology, there are still mysteries out there, and that the human mind itself is a vast, unexplored territory.
And to our listeners, I'll leave you with this. The next time you think about the Bermuda Triangle, don't just think about the ships and planes that have vanished. Think about the limits of what we know, the power of our own minds, and the endless mysteries that still surround us. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.